Hello and welcome to Profit Visibility Lab. This week, we're looking at false cause clarity. In this pattern, we make a decision that we feel good about only to discover that it did not address the root issue or the root constraint. This happens more often than we'd like to admit. Or let's dig into it. So, what this looks like is something worked, but we don't know why. The founder gets certainty, but not confirmation. And this is where the challenge lies. What it feels like is that demand fluctuates unexpectedly. Results improve after the intervention. So in this case, we're going to look at a price increase, which is a very common recommendation for businesses. So we do that increase and it looks like it worked. The confidence increases rapidly because you're thinking, oh my gosh, something actually worked out. And so we're glad and we hope that it is the fix. But what happens is that because we think we have the answer, we stop looking for the root cause. And then the instability returns. So we make the change. In this case, we're going to be looking at a price increase. And outcome improves, confidence increases, explanations are accepted. We're moving on to the next challenge. The investigation, because the investigation is ended, but the instability is still there. Okay? It's still there. So how this happens is the founder mistakes the fact that they took an action and then there was an improvement, mistakes that for causal, and it's really not. So even though there's an improved outcome, there's no confirmation on what really caused the outcome. And when we don't understand what caused a change in the business, then we cannot guarantee repeatability. We want to identify what caused it so we understand what we can, because we want to understand where we can invest or reinforce our decisions with resources, okay? So what it looks like, in this case, we're looking at a pricing fix, right? So, and this is very common advice that is received, especially in SMBs, where, people will say, most SMBs don't charge enough. And so pricing is one of those things where people automatically say, hey, you need to charge more. But it's not always the case, and different advice applied to different businesses can have different results. So in this case, the founder gets some advice and says, hey, I think we need to increase our prices, and then increases it, right? So we think it's a pricing problem when everything improves. So when we started in the beginning, the founder observation was demand is uneven. So we're looking at 40 qualified leads, 25% close rate, 10 new clients, 4,000 average deal size, and a revenue of 40,000. So when the price increase is implemented, we think it worked, right? So we went to now 20 qualified leads, but 30% close rate, 6 new clients, and at the new pricing, 60,000 in revenue. Fixed, right? But there's two things happening here. There's the visible part of what has occurred, and then there is the invisible part of what's occurred, right? And one has more of an impact than the other. So what's visible is the founder sees, well, hey, revenue went from 40 to 60. We good. Revenue improved. Feels like confirmation. No more investigation needed. But what's invisible is that the qualified leads went down and there are fewer new clients, which everyone says, well, that's the whole reason why you do the pricing increase, so you can have fewer clients, make more money. But the pipeline is decreasing and the consistency is still unknown. So what we really want, what I want, what you want maybe, is same number of new clients, less work required for those new clients, consistent, stable demand. Okay. So what's going on here? So you look at that and you see that now the demand is getting unstable again. So you're prompted now to continue the investigation that was stopped earlier, right? And then what you discover is, oh, wait a minute, referrals actually are most of our wins. The marketing doesn't really convert well. Opportunity flow varies from month to month still, right? And then qualified demand is inconsistent still. So the original constraint was not pricing after all. It was demand. Okay? That never got fixed. So we addressed demand. Now it's stabilized. So now the metrics look like qualified leads of 60, right? Close rate is 25%. New clients, 15. And average deal size, 6,700. With a revenue of 100,000, even at a lower price point. Or a midway price point, I guess. So demand is becoming predictable. So the reality check here is that the pricing did provide some improvement, but because it wasn't confirmed, it was a short-term solution, not a long-term solution. But what the evidence showed, that even though there was improvement with the pricing, that the improvement was not proof of cause, and the actual constraint remained hidden. In other words, we still never fixed demand, which was the original issue, right? So what's the difference? Amplification says, hey, it worked. Let's just do more of it. Versus it worked, but why did it work? So we can repeat it. And better than just repeating the activity, let's repeat the outcome. Same outcome, different operating intelligence. So we still had more clients, but once we know why a tactic works, then it can become repeatable. And then the system, what happened behind the scenes on the system is, if we have this false cause clarity, we don't address the true constraint, then we run into things like you're allocating resources to the wrong cause at that timing. Everything's a timing issue, right? But demand instability remains hidden because you felt like you had the right answer and didn't fix the core, the root issue, then that instability remained. So even though you increased the prices, you never dealt with the demand, and so then you have this issue. So future decisions target the wrong lever in this case, because the decisions are around pricing when really demand instability is still weakening. So when we look at a pattern like this, false cause clarity, there's a couple paths you can take. So you can just accept that it worked and move on, because sometimes, hey, there's a lot going on and that makes sense sometimes. But for a longer term, scalable solution that results in repeatable revenue, you want to look at, why did it work? And you want to look at the entire revenue system so you can pinpoint how it impacts the rest of your revenue system. Okay? The way we do that is with a map. What the map reveals is where movement is happening in the revenue system. Why do we need to know that? Because then we can see not only where the origin is for that particular constraint, but we can also see how it propagates through and make the decision that provides the most leverage in forward moving revenue. So what is a revenue system map? Is where the work happens in the revenue system. So if we're looking at demand, for example, we look at Spotlight, which is where visibility is created. This was where our root cause was, our origin constraint was in this particular example. And then we look at, through that lens of the revenue system, we look at all the other areas, right? So before your next pivot, we want to make sure that we diagnose before we deploy.